He didn't stop all at once, and if someone had asked him when it began, he wouldn't have been able to answer because it didn't feel like a decision. It felt like something that slowly slipped away from him without him realizing it. The Dhikr he used to say every morning and every night didn't feel urgent anymore, and missing it once didn't seem like a big deal, so he told himself he would say it later, but later didn't always come. At first it was small, almost unnoticeable. He would delay it, then forget it, then remember but feel too tired to say it, and over time what used to be part of his daily rhythm quietly disappeared, not completely at once but piece by piece, until there were days when he didn't say it at all and didn't even think about it. Nothing around him changed in the beginning. His life stayed the same, his routine stayed the same, and there was no clear sign that anything was wrong, so he didn't question it, because when something disappears slowly, you don't always feel its absence immediately. But something inside him began to shift. Not suddenly and not in a way he could easily explain, but quietly, in small moments that felt slightly different from before, moments he almost ignored at first. His nights didn't feel the same anymore. They felt heavier, as if the silence had weight, as if something unseen was pressing against the stillness, making it feel uncomfortable in a way he couldn't describe. His thoughts became louder, not clearer, just louder, as if his mind had more room to wander, more space to fill with things that didn't bring him peace, and the calm he once had, the calm that used to settle in his chest without effort, slowly began to fade. He noticed it one evening when he sat alone in his room, the lights dim, the air still, and everything around him exactly as it had always been, yet something felt different. There was a feeling in his chest. Not exactly fear, but not calm either. Something in between. Something unfamiliar. He shifted slightly in his seat, looking around the room without really knowing why, his eyes moving from one corner to another, searching for something he couldn't name. Nothing was there. Everything looked normal. But it didn't feel normal. He leaned back, trying to dismiss the feeling, telling himself it was just stress, just tiredness, just a long day catching up with him, but the more he tried to ignore it, the more present it became. It stayed with him. Quiet. Persistent. Uncomfortable. His heart began to beat a little faster, not enough to panic, but enough to notice, enough to make him aware that something inside him was reacting. And that made him pause. Because this wasn't how his nights used to feel. There used to be a calm in the silence, a sense of safety, a stillness that felt peaceful, not empty. But now the silence felt different. Heavier. As if it wasn't empty anymore. As if something else was there. The thought came suddenly, and he immediately pushed it away because it didn't make sense and he didn't want to entertain it. He stood up and walked across the room, trying to distract himself, his steps slow, his movements slightly tense without him fully realizing it, as if his body had noticed something before his mind accepted it. He stopped near the window, looking outside into the darkness, hoping that changing his focus would change how he felt, but it didn't. The feeling followed him. He turned back toward the room, his eyes scanning the space again, more carefully this time, more intentionally, as if he expected to find something. But again, nothing. No sound. No movement. No sign. And yet, that feeling remained. He rubbed his hands together slightly, trying to ground himself, trying to bring himself back to what felt normal, but his mind kept returning to the same question. Why does it feel like I'm not alone? He didn't say it out loud. He couldn't. Because saying it would make it real. And he wasn't ready for that. So instead, he dismissed it again, forcing himself to sit back down, forcing himself to act like everything was normal, even though it didn't feel that way. But deep down, something inside him had already noticed the difference. Something had already changed. And he couldn't fully ignore it anymore. He sat there in silence, his chest slightly tight, his thoughts moving slower now but heavier, as if each one carried more weight than before, and in that stillness, he realized something. This feeling, it wasn't random. It hadn't just appeared out of nowhere. There was a reason. There had to be. His mind began to search for it, going through his days, his routine, his actions, trying to find what had changed, what had shifted, what had led him to this moment. And slowly, the answer came. Not loudly, not suddenly, but clearly enough. The Dhikr. The words he used to repeat without thinking. The protection he never questioned. The remembrance he had slowly let go of. His chest tightened slightly as that realization settled in, because he had never connected the two before. He had never thought that something so simple, something so small in his eyes, could be linked to how he felt now. But the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. Before, his silence was filled. Now, it wasn't. Before, his heart felt guarded. Now, it felt exposed. And maybe, that wasn't a coincidence. He swallowed slowly, his gaze lowering, his thoughts heavier now, because this wasn't just a strange feeling anymore. This was something deeper. Something real. Something he had caused without realizing it. And for the first time, the thought he had been avoiding returned, clearer than before. What if I removed the very thing that was protecting me? The room stayed silent. But now, that silence didn't feel empty. It felt watched. And he didn't know yet what had entered in place of what he had left behind. The feeling didn't leave him after that night, and what unsettled him the most was not that it existed, but that it stayed, quietly following him into the next day and into the next night as if it had found a place and decided not to leave. At first he tried to return to normal, telling himself it was just in his head, just a moment of weakness, just something he imagined because he was tired, but even as he moved through his day there was a subtle difference he couldn't ignore. The world around him looked the same, people spoke the same, and his routine didn't change, but inside something felt off, as if a layer of calm had been removed and replaced with something heavier that didn't settle no matter what he did. He noticed it most in silence, because moments that used to feel peaceful now felt stretched, as if they lasted longer than they should, and within those moments his thoughts didn't slow down, they expanded, moving into places he didn't like and creating a quiet tension that stayed in his chest. That night he hesitated before turning off the lights, and even though it was a small moment, it felt new because before darkness had never bothered him, it was just part of the night, something natural and something normal. But now as he stood there with his hand near the switch, he paused as if he wasn't fully sure what the darkness would feel like anymore. He shook his head slightly and turned the lights off anyway, letting the room fall into darkness, but the moment it did, that feeling returned stronger than before. He lay down slowly, his eyes adjusting while his breathing tried to stay steady, but his awareness became sharper as if his senses were trying to pick up something they couldn't fully detect. The room was quiet, too quiet, and he turned slightly on his side, pulling the blanket closer, trying to settle himself, but the comfort didn't come as easily as it used to. Time passed slowly and heavily, and then something subtle happened, something so light that he almost questioned whether it had happened at all, but the feeling in the room shifted as if the space around him had changed even though nothing visible had moved. His eyes opened slightly and his gaze fixed into the darkness, trying to adjust, trying to see, but there was nothing there to confirm what he felt. And yet his chest tightened because even without seeing anything, he felt it, and the thought returned again, clearer than before, that he was not alone. He swallowed slowly, his throat dry, his body still, because moving suddenly felt like it would confirm something he wasn't ready to accept. So instead he listened carefully, but there were no footsteps, no sound, no movement, and still the silence didn't feel empty, it felt occupied. His heart began to beat faster, and this time it was impossible to ignore, because the feeling wasn't fading, it was growing, and another thought followed quietly but heavily, asking why it felt closer tonight. That question made everything inside him tense, because it suggested something he didn't want to believe, that this wasn't random and that something was actually changing. He turned onto his back, staring into the darkness above him, his thoughts moving faster now, trying to connect what he had been ignoring, and slowly he remembered the Dhikr he used to say every night, the words that once filled his silence, the protection he never questioned but had quietly abandoned. His chest tightened further as that realization settled in, because now the connection felt real. Before his nights were filled with remembrance, but now they were empty, and that emptiness had not remained empty, it had allowed something else to settle. He pushed himself up slightly, his back against the bed, his breathing uneven now because for the first time he wasn't just feeling something, he was understanding it. He had removed something that used to protect him, and now he was feeling the absence of that protection in a way he couldn't ignore. The room stayed the same, unchanged and silent, but his perception of it had completely shifted, and when he looked toward the corner of the room his eyes tried to focus harder as if expecting to find something that would explain everything. But there was still nothing there, and yet the feeling didn't leave, and that made it even heavier, because it meant that what he felt didn't need to be seen to be real. He rubbed his hands together slowly, trying to ground himself, but his thoughts kept returning to the same place, to the Dhikr he had stopped, to the words he had left behind without realizing their weight. He questioned himself silently, wondering when it had become so easy to leave something that once protected him, wondering how something so small in his eyes had been something so big in reality, but deep down he already knew the answer because he had allowed it to fade without thinking it mattered. He leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees, his head lowered, and for a moment he sat there in silence, not running from the feeling anymore but facing it, because now it was clear that this was not just fear and not just imagination, this was something real, something connected to what he had left behind. And as he sat there, another shift happened, not a sound and not a movement, but a feeling that settled deeper, closer than before, and this time he couldn't deny it, because it felt like whatever he couldn't see had moved nearer. His heart pounded harder and the fear became clearer, not overwhelming but strong enough to hold him still, and in that moment one truth settled deeply inside him, that this would not stop on its own, because whatever had entered had found a place, and unless something changed it would not leave. He lowered his gaze slowly, his thoughts heavy but focused now, because for the first time he knew what he needed to do, not later and not tomorrow but now, because the longer he waited the closer it felt, and he wasn't sure how close it could get. He swallowed slowly, his lips parting slightly, and in the silence of that night, with his heart beating louder than before, he whispered the words he had not said in a long time, not perfectly and not confidently, but sincerely, because now he understood their weight and their power. And as the first word left his lips, the silence shifted, just slightly but enough for him to notice, enough for him to realize that something had changed, and for the first time since the feeling began he felt a difference. Not gone, but pushed back. And that was enough to understand that he was not as alone as he had felt, and that maybe what had come closer could also be pushed away. The words didn't come easily and they didn't come perfectly, but they came, and that alone was enough to change something in the space around him, because the moment he began remembering Allah again, even in the weakest way, something shifted, not visibly and not in a way he could clearly describe, but in a way he could feel. The heaviness didn't disappear completely, but it loosened slightly, as if whatever had been pressing against the silence had stepped back, not gone, but no longer as close as before, and that small change was enough to steady his breathing. He stayed where he was, his voice low, repeating the words again and again, slowly and carefully, not rushing and not forcing anything, just holding on to what he had almost lost, and with every repetition his chest felt a little lighter, not calm yet, but moving toward it. He closed his eyes briefly and focused on the words, because for the first time in a long time they didn't feel routine, they felt necessary, they felt real, as if he finally understood what they had been protecting him from. The room remained dark and quiet, but the silence didn't feel the same anymore, it no longer felt occupied in the same way, and that alone made his body relax slightly, even though something inside him remained alert. Because he knew. The feeling hadn't disappeared. It had only pulled back. He opened his eyes slowly, his gaze adjusting to the darkness again, his focus sharper now, not searching with panic, but observing with awareness, and in that awareness something new appeared inside him. A thought. Clear. Unavoidable. What if it comes back? His chest tightened slightly, not with the same fear as before, but with a deeper understanding, because this question wasn't coming from panic, it was coming from realization. This wasn't just one moment. This wasn't just one night. This was something connected to what he had changed over time. He leaned back slightly, his breathing steadier now but his thoughts heavier, because now he could see it clearly, he had removed something that protected him, and for the first time he had felt what it was like without it. And that experience had changed him. He lowered his gaze, his hands resting together, and the more he thought about it, the clearer it became, because the Dhikr he used to say was never just words, it was never just something small, it was something that filled his silence, something that guarded him in ways he had never questioned. Now he understood. Not completely, but enough. Enough to know that it mattered. Enough to know that it was real. He looked toward the corner of the room again, his eyes calmer now, not searching with fear but with awareness, and even though there was still nothing there, the feeling had changed. It was no longer as close. But it was not gone. And that meant something. It meant that what he had felt was not imagination, and it meant that what he was doing now, even in its weakest form, was making a difference. He took a slow breath, his chest rising and falling more evenly, because now there was something else inside him, not just fear but understanding, and that understanding brought something new. Responsibility. Because now he knew. And once you know, you cannot return to being careless. He sat there quietly, repeating the words again, not out of fear this time, but out of understanding, because now he realized that this was not something to say only when he felt uneasy, this was something he needed every day, every night, in every moment he could. Because protection was not something you turn on and off. It was something you hold on to. Something you maintain. Something you do not let fade. He closed his eyes again, his breathing steady now, his heart calmer than before, and for the first time since that strange feeling began, he felt a sense of control. Not over everything, but over himself. And that changed everything. Because now he understood that his actions had opened a door. And his actions could close it. Slowly. Consistently. He opened his eyes again, his gaze steady, and even though the night was still dark and the room was still silent, it no longer felt the same. Because now he was not sitting in that silence empty. He was filling it. And that made all the difference. The fear that once held him still had changed into something quieter, something more controlled, something that no longer pushed him back but kept him aware. He knew the feeling had not fully disappeared, and maybe it would not right away, but that did not matter in the same way anymore. Because now he knew what to do. He took another slow breath, his voice returning again, repeating the words, holding onto them more firmly this time, not out of desperation but out of certainty. And as the night continued, one truth became clear to him. This was not the end of the feeling. This was the beginning of the fight. And this time he was not unprotected anymore. The next night came, and this time he was not careless, because the memory of what he had felt before stayed with him, not as fear, but as awareness that refused to let him return to how he used to be. He moved through his evening differently, more present, more conscious of what he was doing, as if every small action now carried meaning. When the time came to sit alone again, the room felt familiar, the same walls, the same silence, the same darkness waiting to settle, but inside him something had changed, because he was not entering that silence empty anymore. He sat down slowly, his posture steady, his breathing controlled, and before the quiet could fully surround him, his lips began to move, softly repeating the Dhikr he had almost lost, not rushing, not forcing, just continuing with a calm focus that felt new. The words filled the space around him. Not loudly, but clearly, and that made a difference. The silence was still there, but it no longer felt heavy in the same way, it didn't feel occupied like before, and even though a part of him remained alert, another part of him felt grounded. Minutes passed, and for the first time since that strange feeling had begun, he didn't feel overwhelmed by the quiet, he felt present in it. But then, slowly something shifted again. Not as strong as before, not as close, but noticeable. A subtle change in the feeling of the room. He didn't stop. He didn't panic. He continued. Because this time he understood. He kept repeating the words, his voice steady, his focus firm, and instead of reacting to the feeling, he held on to what he knew mattered. The shift came again. Slightly stronger. And for a moment, his chest tightened, but he didn't let it take over because now he knew that this was not something to run from, this was something to stand through. This is the test, he thought quietly, not in fear but in clarity. Because now it was clear. This was not random. This was not imagination. This was a response. He lowered his gaze slightly, his breathing steady, and continued the Dhikr without stopping, and the more he continued, the more something inside him strengthened, not all at once but enough to hold him in place. The feeling didn't disappear immediately. It resisted. It stayed. But it didn't come closer. And that alone told him something. He was not as vulnerable as before. He sat there longer than he usually would have, not out of fear but out of intention, because now he understood that stopping too early meant leaving space again, and he was no longer willing to leave that space empty. His voice remained low but constant, the words flowing one after another, and slowly something began to change. The tension in his chest softened. The air felt lighter. And that presence he couldn't see, felt weaker. Not gone, but pushed back. He noticed it clearly this time, not just as a feeling but as a difference, as if the space around him had been reclaimed, not completely, but enough to make him realize what was happening. He took a slow breath, his chest rising and falling with more ease now because for the first time, he wasn't just reacting to what he felt. He was affecting it. And that realization gave him something new. Confidence. Not in himself alone, but in what he was holding onto. He lifted his head slightly, his gaze steady, his thoughts clear, because now he understood something he hadn't understood before. This wasn't about fear. This was about protection. And protection required consistency. He couldn't return to neglect. He couldn't treat it as something optional. Because now he had seen the difference. He had felt the absence. And he had felt the return. And that left no space for doubt. The room was still dark. The night was still quiet. But it no longer felt the same. Because now the silence was filled. Not with something unknown, but with something he had chosen. He lowered his gaze again, continuing the Dhikr, not out of urgency now but out of understanding, because he knew that this was not just about this moment. This was about every moment after. And slowly, as the minutes passed, the feeling that had once unsettled him faded further, not completely disappearing but no longer holding the same weight. He remained where he was, calm, steady, aware, because now he wasn't waiting for something to happen. He was holding his ground. And that was something he had never done before. The fear that once controlled him had changed into something else, something quieter, something that no longer pushed him away but kept him alert in the right way. He took one more slow breath, his chest light, his mind clear, and as the night continued, one truth settled deeply inside him. He was not weak. He had just been unguarded. And now, he wasn't anymore.